Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Report. Lot to talk about this week. Week 4 brought in our DFS specialist Michael Hitchcock to help us run through the news. As always, I'm here with Hasan. How's it going, guys?
Living the dream. Just a reminder for everyone who's listening to this on the recording version. We are doing these Sunday night. We record them at 7 p.m. So we're doing this while the games are still happening. In fact, if you guys are looking for a timestamp, Romeo Doubs just scored a touchdown, and he absolutely nuked the defender, who I believe was Jonathan Jones. So Jonathan Jones, rest in peace. And all hail Romeo Doubs. Michael, how's it going, man?
Great. Got plenty of Doubs on dynasty teams, thanks to RotoViz saying he was the play over Christian Watson. So things are good, man.
Speaking of things being good, I actually wanted to touch on your article this week because you kind of really nailed, I think, a lot of the meat and bones of how to construct your small field GPP lineups. You mind talking to some of our listeners just about your process here? And just sort of how your DFS day went, just because I'll be pretty honest, I followed your stuff to a T, and I've got some sweats going on right now.
Oh, nice. So I do not have any sweats, but so basically the thought process this week was I really liked the Philadelphia-Jacksonville game, but it was just really tough to fit Hurts and a pass catcher and Kirk, who was 6,600, with Henry, because I really liked Henry, wrote him up. He's been getting some targets. I think he's like 35 PPR a game when he gets more than 4 targets. But, his targets have been going up, which is nice. So that didn't really work out too well because Lawrence, Kirk, A.J. Brown didn't really do much. And then I thought Amari Cooper was going to be a sneaky play, but apparently so did everybody else, and he didn't really do too well either. So I didn't really do too well, but you got some sweats going on?
I have one, and it's kind of all contingent on Jerry Jeudy here because I saw you wrote Rashid Cook. So really hoping for a couple of big Jerry Jeudy, some Jerry Jeudy time right here, because I can tell you guys right now, I lost a lot of money sports betting. So for those of you who do sports bet, don't do it.
Like low dollar parlays with high odds for fun, but I don't really do too much sports betting either. It's like the fantasy.
You had the under on Justin Fields passing yards or something?
No, because that was like the lowest it's ever been for any player of all time. That was a bad that would have been a bad play, but just like a bad run out on like a lot of like by the hook type of L's. But yeah, Jerry Jeudy is kind of my ticket here to either a top 10 or a top 5 finish.
Awesome.
in a couple of leagues, but I haven't checked the standings of late, so let's see how that like shakes out. But the people aren't here to listen to talk about our fantasy teams. Let's be honest, they're here to hear about the news and a guy who we talked about last week. He popped off last week, and he continues to pop off. Chris Olave, he caught 4 of 7 targets for 67 yards and a scored in the Saints' week 4 loss to the Vikings. So, Michael, are you going to be just sort of, is he like an every week must start kind of player, like contingent on price, obviously? Is this like, he seems to do it with Winston and now the Red Rifle. And then Blair, I had a question for you because like he wasn't an early declare, but like you were fairly high on him. Go to the draft season, is he one of those prospects that kind of defies that early declare heuristic that we have?
Yeah, he might be, and I think the thing that you have to look at is, you have to kind of ask why guys don't declare early, especially when they could have. So Olave at Ohio State was better than a lot of the guys he was playing alongside. Like he looked better in many cases than Garrett Wilson, for instance. Much better than Jamison Williams when he was at Ohio State. So, you look at Olave as a guy who could have probably declared early and gotten that high draft capital.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason chose not to. And maybe it's because he actually didn't get a high draft grade after his junior season. I'm not actually sure on that. If that were the case, that would almost be a red flag. But in any case, I mean, he looks pretty awesome out there, racking up the air yards and scoring touchdowns. So, yeah, I would say I was higher on Olave than I would normally be on a 4-year senior, but still had him lower than a lot of other of the rookie guys. So, but I'm excited to see him.
Michael, where are you at on his play as a weekly DFS play? Price contingent.
I'm not sure what his price will be, but I mean, if Michael Thomas is going to be banged up or be out, I would say he's probably going to be a pretty good play, because I feel like a lot of guys like that, like their price doesn't rise high quickly enough, and people are still hesitant to play them on the way up. And I feel like that's kind of the same thing in dynasty fantasy football too, where like you can still acquire these guys as they're having these big games, because maybe other owners are looking to cash out, or they just think, maybe that performance is a little fluky, so they're not valuing them as high as they should. Like, Blair, do you think, like, my buddy was asking me this earlier today, like, would you give up like a lottery first round pick, like top 4 2023 first for Olave? Like, I feel like that's got to be at least fair, whether you would do it or not. I feel like it's like a fair assessment at this point.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair given what we've seen from him. Like, obviously the Saints use him a lot. They use him in ways that tend to lead to high scoring fantasy days. So I think that definitely you would have to consider that. I mean, the time value of a 2023 pick alone makes
for sure.
It's a little bit less than probably what Olave gives you now.
Right.
Blair, you mentioning that he bucks that trend of prospect who doesn't have to be an early declare but could have been an early declare had he chose, reminds me a lot of another guy who you and I used to talk about quite a lot last year when he was having a massive season, was Debo Samuel. Remember, because Debo was a guy that we wrote up and we had no idea how to treat it because he was injured and he was like smashing, and he would have left had he not gotten hurt in back-to-back seasons. Like we were very like, because it's really where the entire framework falls apart, is these guys who smashes, like basically have these coming out parties, like they end the season with that dominator rating that you want to see, and then they still have to, then they're forced to go back to school, whether it's, or they choose to go back to school like Cortland Sutton did, right? Like Cortland Sutton said he wanted a degree, like it was like a matter of pride for his family, and he's a phenomenal prospect. So like, there are always going to be these exceptions to the early declare heuristic, because you can use it as a really good rule of thumb for who's good. But there are these like elite prospects who tend to stick around for whatever reason, right? Like maybe Olave, decided I want to try and win a national championship, and I think we have the team to do it, and they didn't, right? And so because I mean that Ohio State team with CJ Stroud is a national championship winner. And I mean, like with the receivers that they've still got coming out this year, like you can see where his like thought process would have been. There's a good question here in the chat, guys, and it's actually on a show sheet from Getz. He says, "What do I do with Taylor?" So Taylor, actually head coach Frank Reich, so said that Jonathan Taylor is undergoing further testing for a potential high ankle sprain. Unfortunately, this is just a hold, man. Like I don't know about you guys, but speaking for myself, as someone who is for lack of a better word, cursed with a 101 a lot this year. I'm stuck. I can't trade him. No one wants to give me what he's actually worth. He's genuinely scoring less than my backup running backs of Raheem Mostert and like Michael Carter. And this is what do you do with a guy like Taylor? I think you just, unfortunately, you have to hold him and then just hope that he comes good like in the later part of the season.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's right. You can't. I mean, I guess you could try and trade him if you need the production now. Like if you're
like 1-3 and you're like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
that's a good point.
Like, and like in Dynasty, like it depends on how you're building your team. I would say, like, for me in Dynasty, I think the best way is to build a team around all the other positions and then get the running backs last, because they don't last as long. So that's how I like to personally build my Dynasty team. So like if you're not a contender and nowhere near contender, and you have Taylor, and there's another person that's on the rise, willing to part with 2 or 3 first-round picks, preferably 3 first-round picks, I would definitely cash out at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think. Yeah, you obviously don't want to sell too low on Taylor because I mean,
no,
he's awesome.
3 first
I
minimum,
think,
I would say, in Dynasty.
Yeah, it's like
anyone is going to give him up for too cheap either. But this also, if you have a Dynasty team that, maybe you can use a running back, and this could be an opportunity to start some trade talks, even if you don't really get a discount on Taylor.
I like that. Like that's an interesting way to think about it. I mean, it's just a shame. Out of curiosity for either of you guys, like, is Hines the pickup here, or is there someone else who we're not seeing? Perhaps Philip Lindsay. Is he still on the team?
Hines for sure.
Is Lindsay still on the team? That's a good question.
I mean, do we want any Colts players not named Michael Pittman right now? If Taylor's out,
man, Pittman didn't even do that well.
So bad.
I actually want a piece of this Kylan Granson guy. Kylan Granson.
Yeah.
Well, both the Colts tight ends popped off today. They had a lot. Like they had a lot of guys just in. They played a lot of 2 tight end sets. I don't know what the Colts were doing. I'm still in shock that. Did you watch the game?
Oh yeah, I'm a Titans fan, so I watched the whole game. I had it on. Yeah.
Can you talk to me a little bit about like the Colts? Like what? Like how did Matt Ryan hit 356 passing yards?
Well, they were down like 24-7 pretty early in the game. So they were literally just throwing the ball a ton, and the Titans are super banged up on defense. Their defense is bad anyway, but they're pretty banged up. They had a lot of guys out. So yeah, I mean, it was just game script. I think Matt Ryan he's fully dust. Every time he throws a pass, I just think of when they signed him or traded for him, whatever. And Reggie Wayne, like 2 weeks later, was like, this guy is giving me Peyton Manning vibes. Just makes me laugh every time.
I mean that's pretty big coming from someone who actually played with Peyton in his prime.
Right, and Matt Ryan's playing the exact opposite of Peyton Manning in his prime.
He's like, what year was it? 2015, 2016 Peyton Manning when.
Right, maybe that Peyton Manning.
In spite of him, despite his lame duck passes.
A lot of bad QB play in the NFL right now.
Yeah, that's actually good to point out, if only because there's like a handful of good QBs, like 4 or 5, and there's like no more middle class. Like it's just all bad, right?
Yeah.
But here's a guy who we think
Ryan, all there.
Yeah, it's just it's all bad, right? But here's a guy who I think could be actually a viable waiver pickup in Kenny Pickett. He completed 10 of his 13 passes for 120 yards. He also had 3 ints in the Steelers' 24-20 Week 4 loss to the Jets, really putting the pick in Pickett there. But what are you guys' thoughts on him? Are you guys going to be bidding on him? How are we approaching that?
Oh, the team, yes, I was bidding on him. I had a trail on the team, like my longest league, and I had and then Mariota, and now it's time for another option. Get Pickett.
Your audio is kind of cutting out, Michael.
Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me? Stuff.
No,
yeah, we're doing it.
Cutting in and out. You can try
1 sec.
Try leaving and coming back in, maybe.
Yeah.
Good.
And I'll make us not look so silly.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go.
Anyway, I think Pickett is I think he's worth going after for sure. I mean, if only for the rushing upside he seems to give you. He could score fantasy points on the ground. And it's not like he's going to be worse throwing the ball than Trubisky was.
I mean, the team's given up on Trubisky, frankly.
Yeah.
I actually watched this game because I'm in market and I can't watch any other games. Like they were done. The team did not want to play for Trubisky. Like they were just done with him. Like you could just tell like the amount of anger and resentment they kind of had towards having him under center.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a couple of the picks that Pickett had were not his fault. One was a phenomenal pick that Chase Claypool bobbled one off his chest into the arms of a Jets set defender who was very hyper aware to swat it into the arms of an actual cornerback, right? So that's like not really on him. Dude, he had this like crazy rushing upside, right? Like 6 carries, 15 yards, 2 scores. The offense looked really good under him. Frankly, the guy who looked the best under him was George Pickens. Like those guys, like maybe it's a last name or something, but they were able to just get something going at the same time. Like Pickens, 6 catches, 102 yards, 8 targets, and then Pat Freiermuth also looked really good with Pickett under center. Deontay Johnson came painfully close to a very big day, but Chase Claypool is pretty much an afterthought now, I think, in this offense with Pickett under center. On the other side of the ball, I really liked what we not really liked, but you weren't going to get much else out of Zach Wilson. He had 18, completed 18 of his 36 pass attempts for 252 yards, a score, and 2 ints. What was interesting to me was his distribution of targets. He was also let down a little bit by his receivers. Interestingly, Corey Davis kind of came up really big for the Jets. 5 catches, 74 yards, and a score. So guys, like, is this the Corey Davis that we thought we'd be getting? Like, he just needed a new change of scenery. Because I mean, Elijah Moore is still there. Garrett Wilson was also still there. He made a few boneheaded drops. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts. Because Wilson did a decent job enough in my mind to where that we actually started him in our main event league. But I'm really interested in him going forward as well.
I feel like Wilson locks on to Davis. I feel like he has ever since he's been starting. And I feel like Pickett locks on to Pickens because maybe we're backups in camp and they've just had a lot of rapport together.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, it's interesting, obviously the Jets won this game, but you didn't see the passing volume from Wilson that we saw from Flacco. And I wonder how much.
No, we did.
He had
36 pass attempts. He just didn't complete as many.
Yeah.
They didn't run like 50 plays.
Well,
like 50
right.
pass attempts, yeah.
I mean, part of that is Breece Hall carrying the ball 17 times, Michael Carter another 9. So they were.
He looks good, man. Breece Hall, he looks like a superstar.
Oh yeah.
I mean, so yeah, I think there's a question about whether this was game script related or whether it's related to the quarterback they have under center. Like they don't somehow want Wilson attempting as many passes as Joe Flacco.
I think it was game script.
It's just interesting. Something.
Yeah, for sure.
No. Like I was watching this game. I think it's mostly game script because like this is the first time the Jets have actually been competitive in a game. Like think back to the one that the Jets won, where there was like
week 2,
right? Yeah, where it was like this ridiculous come from behind win.
Right. I think they were losing most of that game.
Against the Browns, yeah. And then yep. The Browns had a massive collapse.
They were winning most of this game, so maybe they just weren't used to the feeling of being ahead, so they didn't really know what to do with themselves.
They did a good job, though. I mean, the one thing I will say is like Wilson actually looks kind of confident in the center. He looked good, which is good. I mean, I'm kind of off the belief that Wilson might actually be the second best quarterback in this class now. Like, I think that we're going to think the proof is going to be in the pudding soon. And I know the fantasy community is like not ready to hear that. They don't want to live in that world, right? Like they just don't want to live in that world. So I think in like super flex leagues, you could potentially send out feelers for Wilson. I mean, realistically, no one has because they don't want him. But now that they're seeing this and they're seeing him able to actually put up points, like realistically, if someone is going to be offering me for Wilson, I'm going to be using him, but the first to try and up tier, right? So like if a Lamar owner tries to like trade for Wilson or something, I'm going to be asking for Lamar if I can make that work. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, people that drafted quarterbacks in last year's rookie class are down bad because chances
Really
are, if
bad.
you drafted Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields, not only did you pass them up for Zach, not only did you pass Zach Wilson up, but you also passed up Kyle Pitts and Jamar Chase.
Yeah,
So
and Wilson was the cheapest, right? Like, Wilson was like dirt cheap, remember?
Yeah, he was the cheapest by far.
Oh man, yeah. So it's genuinely interesting, like how guys like Lawrence retain their value. But I'll be interested in seeing how Wilson's value shifts going forward, right? Because like he's actually got the better supporting cast. Like like this is kind of like the a little bit like the Geno Smith thesis, right? Like you wanted to stash him because he was able to throw to Metcalf, throw to Lockett. They had,
Right.
and I mean, like, and today this was a game that you actually pointed out, Michael. But the guy I wanted to highlight on the Seahawks side is really Rashad Penny, who carried the football 17 times for 149 yards and 2 scores, and got his lone target for 6 yards in the Seahawks' Week 4 win over the Lions. So just want to get your thoughts, like I know you targeted this game fairly heavily, so what got you really onto it?
So, I mean, Penny was only 4,900, and I felt like his mix of floor and ceiling was very similar to, a Khalil Herbert, or maybe not floor, but definitely ceiling. Khalil Herbert and Jamal Williams at just a fraction of the ownership. Unfortunately, Jamal Williams had a great game himself, so that really didn't help me too much. But, yeah, I mean, Penny is just awesome. Like, anytime he has like a good matchup and positive game script, like he's just awesome. He had another long run today. He lived on those long runs down the stretch last season. I think he's just a really good player.
Yeah,
I mean that's a skill, right? Explosiveness.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. He's definitely like a really good runner, maybe one of the best runners in the league.
When healthy, yeah.
Yeah, I think you have to be concerned with the lack of targets. Even Ken Walker only got 1 in this game. Penny only got 1. DJ Dallas basically had, I don't know. He did nothing. It looks like he played some snaps, but no offensive touches. Which, I mean, it's Seattle. You don't expect a lot of running back targets here, but
no, definitely not.
Does kind of change how you look at these guys kind of on a week to week basis, because they don't have that pass catching upside.
Right. And that's just like a watered down version of like what Derrick Henry is.
Yeah.
So like if he's not in a positive game script, like, Titans were up 27-10 in today's game. So obviously Henry had a good game.
Yeah.
But last week Henry had some major targets. So, but you said you were a Titans fan, so I wanted to get your thoughts on this one, which is Jaylen Burks, who left the locker room today on crutches and in a walking boot after being carted off in injury. What do you think the distribution of targets is there going forward?
So
because Derrick Henry got 5 targets again today.
Woods and Henry, they don't really have much else. It's just going to be, but they don't throw a whole lot, so it's a small pie to go around. On the games that they win, they're not going to throw a lot. And Vrabel's like an old school kind of guy, and Burks had a holding penalty that cost the Titans a touchdown today. So even if Burks, I feel like he wouldn't be on the rise just yet. He's a super old school coach that, like he got mad at Malik Willis in the preseason for running too much. Like that's what he does. Like it's the guy you drafted. It's kind of frustrating, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm off to believe that they should be turning in Malik anyway, but the team keeps winning, so like, how can you change it up?
Yeah, and it's a bad division too, so I mean, pretty good chance we're gonna just get stomped by the AFC good teams and the good AFC teams in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's not. It's certainly not very competitive.
No, but then again, the NFC West is not as good as we thought it was going to be. The Raiders have been terrible. The Broncos have been pretty terrible.
Oh yeah. Speaking of
the Broncos, actually, since potentially big injury there as well.
Yeah.
Williams down with a knee injury. He was carted off the field. I mean, Melvin Gordon actually, I don't know what's happened since, but he still has negative fantasy points in this one. So he's,
I think they benched him for that fumble. I think he fumbled twice in this game, and he's fumbled 4 times. I feel like Mike Boone's probably. I haven't. Mike Boone. I feel like Mike Boone. I mean, Mike Boone's definitely going to be a hot waiver pickup this week. Melvin Gordon's not getting all the touches, and I mean, if he fumbles again, you can't just fumble every game. Like, the coaches are going to bench you. Like we were just talking about, these guys are old school. They don't like when you put the ball on the ground.
Yeah, do you think Mike Boone is worth adding particularly if you're a Jonathan Taylor owner or Javonte Williams owner?
Yeah, or if you have like Travis Etienne and you're still hanging on to that dream. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean today Travis, he had like 8 rushes for 32 yards, right? Like the Etienne dream is rapidly going down the toilet, man.
He didn't have fewer rushing attempts than James Robinson, though.
I know.
And Robinson did lose a fumble in this game, I think.
I mean, the Titans jumped out to not the Titans. The Jaguars jumped out to an early lead. Those were like the only points they would score.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's almost like Christian Kirk and Jamal Agnew. Aren't it? You know what I mean?
And it was on a play that Etienne should have been in on. Like, it was the little like halfback flare out to the right side. Like, why wasn't that Etienne? Why was that Jamal Agnew? So frustrating.
So JaMychal Hasty with 2 targets, which is more than Etienne or Robinson. I mean, I don't think he's a thing, but how long can you hold on to Etienne before you have to, think about making some serious changes? I mean,
I think with all the injuries, you can hold him, but you definitely shouldn't be starting him anymore. Like, I feel like 4 weeks is a decent enough sample size where we're starting to get into, the teeth of the season where you're really going to see guys' roles start to define here over these next few weeks, and he probably isn't startable right now.
Do you think he's someone who's worth throwing out some kind of low ball offers for?
In Dynasty?
Well,
I mean, I don't know.
In Dynasty or redraft? Because I feel like redraft is really hard to trade.
Yeah.
It's like I got like really, like I was really feeling myself in a redraft home league, and I traded away Tyreek Hill for Javonte Williams last week.
Wow.
And the trade hasn't settled. I was like, I don't own any Javonte. Maybe I'll do it this one league. And
it was looking good. I mean, your process was sound. I mean, Melvin fumbled twice today. Like, it was going to be his backfield. Like, it was signed, sealed, delivered. It was over, man. Like, he was about to take over today. That was happening.
My whole issue is in this league, I have Kyler Murray, Christian McCaffrey, Khalil Herbert, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Mark Andrews, Cortland Sutton, Gabe Davis, Drake London, Elijah Moore, Darrell Henderson, Michael Carter, and Romeo Doubs, right? So like I was like, I'm really feeling myself. Like, I can do what I want.
Yeah. Shout out Romeo Doubs, man. He's having a game.
Yeah.
They just took away what should have been a big touchdown from him, which would have given me also a win on a prop bet, but some things are just not to be. Today is the day that I'm just going broke. I need to find a bridge or something and live under there for a while. Actually, Michael, earlier we were talking off camera, and you had a really good point about elite tight ends and like the case for elite tight ends, especially in best ball. So TJ Hawkinson in that game against the Seahawks, he got 8 of 12 targets for 179 yards and 2 scores in the Lions' Week 4 loss to the Seahawks. Do you want to talk to me a little bit about one, Hawkinson, and then 2, the theory here behind elite tight ends?
So I think Hawkinson, his price was egregious on Underdog specifically all summer. He was like a 7th, sometimes 8th round pick. Like, that just never made any sense to me. So he's my highest owned player on Underdog. I didn't max it or anything, but I mean, 11 or 12 teams over there, he's definitely my highest owned guy. And when it comes to elite tight end, I mean, it's just clear. Like, these guys that score 30, 40 points in a week, like it takes some of the middle tight ends like 3 or 4, sometimes 5 weeks to score that many. Like it's literally just giving you such leverage on your team. Like Mark Andrews went 2 catches for 15 yards today. Like he's an elite tight end. But I mean, a lot of times you're facing a guy, especially in head-to-head leagues, that's getting like 6 points from their tight end, and you're scoring 40. Like you're basically starting with a 35-point head start. Like it's pretty simple to me. I mean, if you have Kyle Pitts, you were dreaming of games like this. It hasn't come to fruition yet.
Yeah.
About these elite tight ends, like obviously they can give you such an advantage, but we know, I mean, from Pitts and Hawkinson, I think the other thing that makes that dynamic so powerful is that you have these elite tight ends who fail so often, either because they underperform or they get hurt more than wide receivers do. So when you get an elite tight end that actually hits, like Mark Andrews this year until today, that really gives you an even bigger advantage. There's like an extra level of scarcity there.
Right.
By the way,
in best ball, you're just banking those points. So like those, you're already like 60 points in the bank for Mark Andrews the first 3 weeks. And like, yeah, this week, maybe he doesn't go into your lineup. Maybe the second tight end that you drafted does. But in redraft, like chances are if you had Mark Andrews on your team, you're probably 2-0 because he scored 30 2 weeks in a row. So that 3-point game today really probably isn't killing you that much because your record is probably good.
Yeah. And one of the other benefits, I guess, in best ball versus managed, even in managed, is just that you don't have to waste roster spots at the tight end position.
Right.
You're not trying to stream tight end. You're not like, oh, I'm gonna hold Robert Tonyan and Noah Fant, and then also one other guy who's like, and Austin Hooper, right? Like, like I'm gonna figure out which one of these 3 yahoos I want to slot into my lineup today, right?
Right. You're not wasting time trying to think about what tight end to start. You're putting that time towards like what running back to pick up.
Yeah, or which wide receiver works. I mean, just
right.
Today we got the Blair. Our Pentagon team is an absolute lesson in hazing in the ME. Because the team we played against today hung 175 points on us, and they still have 2 players left to go.
It was a Hawkinson team, I assume.
Right? Yeah. We have Penny, by the way. So we went up against the Hawkinson team. They beat the brakes off of us. Like this is like legitimately unfair because like they got like a 35 spot out of Josh Jacobs.
You mentioned that we're starting Zach Wilson because he looks good, but the real reason is because there just is nobody else.
Yeah, like everyone's rostered all the quarterbacks. Like
it's like, do you want to start Justin Fields? Do you want to?
That's legitimately, I think Ben Gretsch looked at quarterbacks and he was like, "Well, this is a whole vibe," and it's like, "Yeah, man, like that vibe is us in a coffin right now, bro."
Man,
it's
Fields, jeez,
terrible vibes coming. Oh my god, I think the Packers are gonna lose this, guys. But speaking of having the brakes beaten off you, the Broncos are having the brakes beaten off them by the Raiders today.
The Raiders have been like really bad to start the season.
Oh yeah, and they're doing it without Darren Waller, so that's another bet that I lost. Oof, that's at 32-23. The Vegas Raiders have beaten the Denver Broncos. So I'm gonna ask. So the Raiders, like the Broncos have the most fraudulent 2-2 record, right? Like they beat the Texans and they beat like the Niners. They've got like the most fraudulent 2-2 record, right?
I don't think so because I think after today, technically the Bears are 2-2. So
the Jets are also 2-2.
Yeah, I think the Bears might be the most fraudulent 2-2, but Broncos got to be pretty close.
The Bears really won 2 games, huh? Shoot.
Yeah.
Let's see.
A lot of I don't know.
Speaking of like a guy who's a controversial draft pick, I wanted to get both your thoughts on this. The guy who's a controversial draft pick all offseason, right? Especially where he started going towards the end was Gabe Davis. He got one of his 3 targets for 13 yards in the Bills' Week 4 win against the Ravens. So Davis has had one good game, and that was back in week 1. Ever since then, he's kind of been quiet. I think it's because he's been injured. But do you guys really think he's going to be, that guy, or is this sort of just like a pipe dream?
I mean, I think he definitely can be that guy. I mean, this was kind of maybe a weird game. I mean, Diggs also didn't do too much. You had McKenzie catching.
Yeah, did you watch the game, Blair?
Yeah, I did.
I watched it.
It was a difficult game to watch.
Second half in particular.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, Buffalo really did not look like they were, they looked like they were having trouble in the first half, in the first 3 quarters, really. And Baltimore's defense is not, normally that good. So,
right. I mean, this is the team that just gave up like 500 passing yards to Tua 2 weeks ago, and then all of a sudden they shut out the Bills in the first half. I think they were maybe playing a little over their heads today in the first half.
Yeah, so I don't know how much really to take away from this one game. I mean, the fact that Gabe Davis hasn't really had much of a fantasy presence outside of week 1. Obviously, he missed week 2, so maybe he's not 100% healthy yet. I'm not ready to give up on Gabe Davis.
No, definitely not. I don't think either. I mean, he's clearly a really talented player. He's shown us time and time again, and he's attached to Josh Allen. So I think, if he was like your second or third wide receiver on your managed league team, I still think you're slotting him in every week. I mean, you're never sitting him.
I actually want to push back a little bit on that Josh Allen comment, because I think Josh Allen's actually reverting to the mean a little bit.
Yeah, he had some pretty iffy throws today.
And by that I mean through the air. Let me be clear here. It's through the air, because he can still get it done with his legs. Because I mean, today he rushed 11 times for 70 yards and a score. That's the only thing that kept him in this game was his rushing production. It's Lamar Jackson-esque, right? Because Lamar had almost the same stat line. It's eerily similar. 11 carries, 73 yards.
Yeah.
I guess it's also the type of offense that it is too, though, because they don't throw to running backs, and they don't have a tight end that demands a lot of targets. So it's a pretty tight target tree.
Yeah.
And they are a pass heavy team. So even if Allen does regress a little bit, I still think it's a nice offense to be attached to, especially if you're a talented player like him. But I mean, I can definitely see us, 4 or 5 months from now being yeah, Gabe probably was a mistake in the 3rd round. He's more of maybe a 5th or 6th round type of player.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, it's what makes it more interesting, because even Devin Singletary was getting into the act today, right? Singletary had he's been getting fed quite a bit to the air. So I guess it kind of speaks to the fact that Gabe Davis isn't 100%. So let me switch up this question a little bit. So in redraft leagues, who are you giving to get Gabe Davis? Because I think he can be got by people who might have bought into the hype.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
I mean, it's a tough question, right? Because Gabe Davis was really one of the.
All right, here's a good one. Because he had kind of a down game today, but he was a 10th round pick. Because I feel this early in the season, people are still looking at what round players were drafted in. So if you drafted Gabe in the 3rd and someone drafted Garrett Wilson in the 10th, then Garrett Wilson last week probably would have been good to offer for someone like Gabe, but this week he had a down week. But I feel that as a trade, you could probably get done Garrett Wilson for Gabe.
Garrett Wilson for Gabe.
Which side would you want of that trade?
I think Gabe still.
Wilson.
I think on principle, I tend to just reject wide receiver for wide receiver trades, like straight up, because I hate playing the guessing game.
Yeah. So one thing I was thinking, a guy who had a really good game today, who I think maybe isn't actually that good. Well, there are 2 of them. You could consider Damien Pierce. who did something today and is kind of trendy. Josh Jacobs also had a good game.
I actually don't think I would trade either of those for Gabe Davis.
No,
I think.
Really?
I mean, well, the issue is running back is really bad.
Right.
Like running and by that I mean like running back, the waiver wire is bleak. Like even the waiver wire is bleak, right? Like you're pretty much going to like war with who you have. I mean, so just to go back a little bit, so like we have ETN and Rashad Penny on our main event team, and we thought we hit the lottery. We were popping bottles, like we were like celebrating like crazy. We were doing things like this is like before we knew what was going to happen, but we took Isaiah Spiller ahead of Melvin Gordon, right? So it's just stuff like where you're taking guys who have like serious contingent value because we didn't necessarily need standalone value as much. And you're seeing guys like, Jamal Williams immediately come into play. And that's just like the way some of this stuff goes is like right now, this waiver wire is one of the worst like early season waivers that I've ever seen.
Why do you think that is? Like, do you think that is because like content is getting better and it's getting sharper? Like, do you think it's going to continue that way this year? And maybe this time next year or heading into draft season, we're looking at strategies like anchor RB and zero RB a little differently and managed because waivers aren't as soft as they've been in recent years?
I think it's because like the issue is you don't have a lot of clear-cut dusty vets who you should be avoiding what others are making that mistake, right? Like dusty vets that people did jump on are guys like Allen Robinson and stuff. Like these are guys who kind of torpedo your roster, right? Like there's like a very clear delineation of guys who you want and then guys who you don't want this year. Like I feel like it's like a binary decision. Blair, correct me if I'm wrong. Like don't you feel that way? Like there was like really when you went down and if you go back to draft season, like there's like of all the available universe of guys who you really want, like they really could have been, you could have like really filtered out like 50% of all available NFL players and you would have been fine.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. It's not about the content getting better or drafters getting sharper or anything. It's almost more a couple of dynamics of having to do with the NFL where there aren't a lot of backfields where you have a backup who's going to inherit a huge workload. You also haven't had a lot of really big first round injuries until today, maybe.
Yeah.
You have a lot of backfields in gross committees and you have, I don't know. I think it has more to do with the makeup of a lot of NFL teams this year than anything on the fantasy side. That's kind of my.
Yeah, so just to macro talk a little bit, or just like strategy game a little bit. Like the big thing this offseason that I heard was that this is the year of the veteran running back, right? Like this is the year because there's no really good running backs. Like we're just gonna see veteran running backs. They reclaim their throne. Psych! They're not reclaiming anything. They're just bad. Like every running back is bad. Like here's the only one true veteran running back who people got right was Saquon Barkley, right? And after today's big game, you got CMC. But as a community, we already know which ones are going to be good. Like you know what I mean, Michael? We were targeting all of these guys, and then it leaves you. I mean, like, do you think like I can actually see a case for trying to trade up for Henry right now? You know what I mean? Like Eckler was dust until like today. You know what I mean? And that was against the Texans who just bleed points at running back position. Right. Benny was like we lost games because Benny couldn't get us like one more catch. Right. So like, you're just getting into these situations. And then there are all these other guys. Like I guess maybe the guys you want to stockpile are the Ken Walkers and the James Cooks and like all these rookie guys. Right.
Talented
guys
players.
You want to talented like Spiller, maybe you want to hold him. Right. Mm-hmm. Rojo, you might want to hold him. But when you play in these leagues, especially the FFPC where you got like 20 player teams, just like everybody worthwhile is rostered. And today I actually went to try to put in a bid for Latavius Murray. And I don't think I saw him. So either he was rostered, he wasn't even in the player pool because he was on the practice squad until this morning. So like it's really just sort of been such a flux position right now with the makeup of these teams. Like you could get Craig Reynolds. He popped off at the end of last season. You know what I mean? So like there's going to be guys that emerge. Like Mike Boone is available now, right? So
Right.
so it's just being patient.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, even when you talk about like the guys who are doing well, like everyone near the top of the running back leaderboard today is someone who was drafted relatively early, and I think
Yeah.
that just has to do with
Yeah.
well, I mean, kind of some of it is just kind of coincidence that these guys are staying healthy for the most part, and we're not seeing these Justin Jacksons and stuff need to be active on game day, although he was today. But
Right. Yeah, it's a good point.
Caleb Huntley, I don't know if he's a thing. Probably not.
That might be one that we have to actually dig into, right? Because Tyler Algier might not be ready and CPAT. I mean, but that entire offense looked pretty bad today. So
yeah, it's Ritter time. Mariota, sorry, man.
I think I
love
agree.
him as a Titans fan. Just I want to root for him and see him succeed, but it's time, man. He's lost
and then
the offense was bad today with Mariota, but like there's almost no way that anybody couldn't come into that offense and be an upgrade for Drake London and Kyle Pitts at this point, right? So I mean,
right.
You have to want Ritter if you're a fantasy gamer.
And on the flip side, I mean, Jahan Dotson continues his quiet takeover, or at least getting a lot more receiving yards. But I will say, man, Michael, like, Wentz got to go, right? Like, got to old yeller him.
God. Baker Mayfield, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, like, enough is enough. Like, there's got to be some better options that we can see than those guys. Those guys are terrible.
Yeah.
Sam Howell, please. We need it. We need it.
How we talked about this last week, and we were talking about it off the air too, me and Michael, and it's just, I mean, like I think it's pretty clear that they should at least give him a shot, but
they need to, right?
But they need to. But on the one hand, they paid Wentz so much, they're probably not ready to give up in the.
But they're paying, but they're paying per loss. I mean, at this point, like Riviera got to be feeling the heat too, right?
Well, yeah.
One nice thing is that like the Cowboys, Giants, and Eagles all have 3 or more wins, and they're 1-3. So I mean, they could be like their playoff hopes could be over like within the next like 5 weeks.
Right.
So maybe there's some chance for Howell fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, like I think the team that's really shaping up for this NFL season was that Father Time remains undefeated. And, you would think that these veterans who have been in the league for a very long time, or at least have been in the league for a while, you expect them to get better, but sometimes they might actually be the problem, right? Like,
we're seeing it with Kamara and Cook right now. Kamara and Cook, like, only a few short weeks, and Cook, like, he's doing okay, but I mean, he's definitely not winning anything for you yet. I mean, maybe there's more big games to come, but I mean, those are the guys that are getting to that age where it's like once it's over, it's going to be over quick, and like dynasty wise, like you're just going to be left holding the bag.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, we say it all the time in our articles and on pods. I mean, even in redraft, you want to be filling your teams with young guys, and even your redraft teams should probably look more like rebuilding dynasty teams.
Right. Yep. Zeke, prime example. He's the best example. I mean, this was the time last year where people were still into him because he was still putting up good fantasy games. But I mean, my God, it is over. You probably couldn't even get a 2nd-round pick for him right now in dynasty. Like, it is over.
Dynasty.
No way. He is done.
I wasn't able to get a 2nd-round pick for him last year. He's been done, man. Like if you play in these sharper leagues, you're holding an asset
points last year. Like at least he was scoring points last year, and this year he's not scoring points and he's worthless.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else we need to touch on before we get out of here?
Don't think so.
News.
No, but I will say I'm very excited for tonight's Chiefs Bucks game.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
realistically, I'm really more excited probably for tomorrow night's Rams San Francisco game, if only because I'm optimistic that we see a Cooper Cup explosion and a possible Debo Samuel explosion.
That would be nice.
Yes.
That'd be nice to see. Need some more wide receiver fireworks after.
Yeah.
Well,
Hamler had like a 60-yard catch today, so
yeah,
be,
but Dust Wilson is not looking good, man. Again,
no, he's not. He is not.
Doesn't it seem like he does this every year, though? Even in Seattle,
Yeah.
like he's terrible to start the season and then picks it up in November.
Yeah, but by this you mean be overdrafted and then tanks your fantasy team,
right? When it's too late,
he's definitely tanking
the
team right now.
After everyone drops him, he's good.
Exactly.
All right, Michael, you are writing DFS stuff for RotoViz. Where else can the people find you?
Just on my Twitter, ff_Hitch.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely check out his work on RotoViz. He covers the DraftKings main slate, mostly small field tournaments, which honestly are probably what most of you should be playing in. So,
yes, for sure. Small field. Build that bankroll.
Definitely. All right. And with that, we'll talk at you later.